simultaneously, and we are working really hard in that regard. And so I'm really proud to announce that the governor said we're going to conduct our first lift today on a piece of a portion of the bridge just north of that deep draft shipping channel. And we will continue planning efforts once we get that cleared to open that up for tug and barge traffic to come into the Port of Baltimore. But that's going to take some more time, and this is a step in that process. Much like when you run a marathon, you've got to take the first few steps. We're taking those first few steps, and we're continuing to get the resources in that will propel us to the finish line. But we're working to get there as fast as we can. We're going to open it as soon as possible, and we're going to continue to do it safely. And I'd like to, later today, you'll hear from the Maryland Department of Transportation about that particular lift, because they're really using their expertise in engineering and their contractors and engineers to help us with that. So I'd like for them to speak more about that. But Governor, thank you very much for your continued support of this unified command. It truly is a partnership, and it's a privilege to get to work here. Thank you, sir. Thanks, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Colonel Butler of the Maryland State Police. The Maryland State Police continue to be an active part of the unified command. As Governor Moore mentioned, the brave members of our underwater rescue teams remain on standby. They will resume their recovery efforts once the unified command has informed them it is safe to resume diving operations. Again, as Governor Moore stressed just moments ago, we are reminding the public that the Federal Aviation Administration has implemented a temporary flight restriction following the bridge collapse. This restriction extends for 3 miles from the center of the bridge in radius and 1,500 feet from ground level up. I want to emphasize the importance of refraining from flying drones in the area. Doing so poses significant risk to the ongoing efforts by all of our partners to respond to this incident and bring it to closure. I urge everyone to exercise responsibility and respect the airspace restrictions around the Francis Scott Key bridge collapse site. Please refrain from operating drones in the facility and the vicinity. Allow emergency personnel to carry out their duties safely and effectively. Law enforcement is actively monitoring the area for illegal drone use. Law enforcement has already responded to multiple drone incursions over the past few days. There's a zero-tolerance policy regarding any drone anywhere within the no-drone zone established by the FAA. Anyone who attempts to fly a drone in any prohibited manner in the area is subject to arrest, prosecution, and/or fines. In addition, we know that this tragedy has far-reaching implications that will affect the daily lives of Marylanders for the foreseeable future. I want to assure the public that the Maryland State Police, the Maryland Transportation Authority Police, and all of our law enforcement partners are working together with the Maryland Department of Transportation to mitigate the impact of this incident on traffic safety. As always, our troopers are actively monitoring road conditions, directing traffic, and enforcing safety regulations to prevent crashes and minimize delays. We're asking all motorists, now more than ever, exercise both caution and patience as we navigate through this challenging period. Please adhere to the posted speed limits, avoid distractions while driving, and never drive impaired. Also, please continue to remember the move over law for first responders, tow truck operators, work crews, and any motorists who may have become disabled on the side of the road. We understand that this situation may cause inconvenience. However, your safety is our top priority. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Paul Wiedefeld, Secretary of Transportation. Emphasizing the Governor's leadership and directions, the Maryland Department of Transportation continues to support the Unified Command salvage efforts. As has been said many times, we've said many more times, the top priority is clearing the shipping channel. Crews are out today working to remove part of the north side of the bridge that remains. The first piece could be removed and dropped off to Trade Point and Landing as soon as today. And as the Admiral said, that is done by some of the forces that we brought on board, but the reality is it's done by Unified Command. That's who's doing that work. And as also was said, this is the first of many steps going forward, but it is a huge milestone as we start this process. I also want to, although we've lost obviously tremendous amount of activity at the Port of Baltimore, there still is some activity going on at the Port of Baltimore, particularly at Trade Point Atlantic. Trade Point Atlantic continues to move auto vehicles and put them into their processing center. We're also working with Trade Point Atlantic to offload auto vehicles at their Sparrows Point facility and move them to processing areas where workers can get them ready for dealerships. This is all about bringing people back to work. I also wanted to stress that the port's distribution operations continue, including cargo that comes in by truck and rail. And we will continue to explore other opportunities, again, to bring labor back to the Port of Baltimore. Turning to traffic, our highway system, we continue to monitor the traffic conditions and any changes that are impacting the system as a whole. As I previously mentioned, we are seeing increased traffic throughout Fort McHenry and the Baltimore Harbor tunnels. That being said, so far, we have not seen any significant additional delays. We do have a special team focused just on traffic issues, as was mentioned by the superintendent. And yesterday, our team held a working session with Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Anne Arundel County to deal with specific issues, immediate specific issues, but also think long-term about some of the issues we may be facing. We also are working with our partners at the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. And we're doing that because they have traffic data and modeling capabilities, but again, will help us plan movement throughout the region. Rebuilding the bridge. Our efforts to rebuild the Francis Scott Key Bridge, we're working closely with our particular Federal Highway Administration partners. The $60 million that we did receive from them are being used today as we start to remove some of the structure there, and they'll continue to help us with some of the traffic mitigations. We're also working with them at the same time to think through how do we fund, how do we design, how do we deliver the new Francis Scott Key Bridge. In closing, as many gathered for the holiday weekend, my thoughts, our thoughts, the department's thoughts continue to be with the families of the contractors we lost. I appreciate the quick action of the first responders, including the Maryland Transportation Authority's police officers who were first on the scene. Their action saves lives. This holiday weekend, I urge everyone to be safe on the roads, slow down, put the phone away, and allow for extra time to reach your destination. Your family is counting on you to return safely. Thank you, Mayor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good afternoon. I'll begin the way I begin every one of these this week with prayers for those we've lost in this tragedy and with those who are bracing for the impacts that our city and our state will confront over the coming weeks and months. As thousands upon thousands of Baltimoreans gather this Easter weekend, I know that this tragedy, these families, and the journey to recovery that our city, our state, and our country are on together will be in everyone's hearts and minds. I want to extend my continued thanks to those at the Unified Command, Coast Guard, State Police, all local and state agencies, and now civilian salvage operators who continue to work around the clock, as you've heard today. Our coordination at every level of government has been second to none in Amarillo. I want to say thank you for leading us in that effort. And with this massive of an operation, that is notable itself. Members of my team, including senior staff and the Mayor's Office of Emergency Management, are embedded, and the daily briefings and coordination is a testament to how we will get this done. As you heard, crews will begin to remove wreckage today, but we must be reminded again that this is going to be a long process. Many of you know that I'm a runner, and I'll say it like this. The winner of the marathon or the 5K is never the person who starts out the fastest. In fact, in my experience, those people end up last or not finishing the race at all. The winner always has the right pace and finishes with a strong kick. That will be all of us when we celebrate the reopening of the channel and the reopening of the bridge in the future. We will all be exhausted, but it will be worth it because we will have achieved our goals the right way and together. Doing it that way is going to make the process smoother and faster in the long run, and that's our ultimate goal. We're engaging with our state and federal partners, offering resources and bringing together business and labor communities as we look towards the long-term impacts this will have.
On the night of the disaster, of course, our first responders were here, our fire boats, our police. But since then, it has been a team led by Governor Moore, and I've been really watching and listening at these daily briefings. And this governor is asking all the right questions, knows how to listen, and allowing folks to do their jobs. And I know that there's always the possibility of friction when so many levels of government are working together. But we have a president who understands the value of infrastructure and understands the value of career public servants. And thank you all for your public service. I want to say something about Anne Arundel County and people and businesses. So if you look across the river, everything south of the bridge is Anne Arundel County, all the way down to the Patuxent River. And that's 530 miles of coast and 600,000 people. And we have neighborhoods that were built in the northern part of our county, the highest density population, that were built because there were jobs at the Port of Baltimore. There were jobs at the steel mill. And we still have folks working at the Port of Baltimore and at Trade Point Atlantic. And it is so important, it gratifies me so much to know that we now have SBA loans for our businesses that benefit from the Port of Baltimore and for the workers. And for the workers, I want to specifically recognize one named Miguel Luna, who was on the bridge that night. Por su familia, nuestro corazón es con ustedes, la familia en El Salvador y también en Glen Burnie. Miguel is from Glen Burnie, and he is one of thousands